Welcome. We're so glad that you're here. We're so glad to be here with you. I have a great guest. He is a returning guest because people enjoy the conversation so much, and we will get to him in a minute. But that is Dr. Jim Segala, and you may know him from the Mystery Blind Frog Ranch and also the first season of Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. And he is going to be answering some of your questions and talking about the medical effects of people's personal contact with UFO UAP. So before we start that, I'm going to go through the intro. Don't mind, it's very humid here. We're doing the best we can do. Father Shawn also is still on medical leave. This is a very serious situation. If anyone wants to make a donation, there is a GoFundMe. And to find that on GoFundMe, it's actually named Join Sharon's Fight to Beat Cancer. This is a very serious and ongoing situation. She has a surgery coming up in June, another surgery coming up in July. So it's quite a lot. And all donations and prayers are appreciated more than you could possibly imagine. And he is so sorry that he is not here with you today and not here with all of us. Father Shawn Whittington is a priest with the United States Old Catholic Church. You may know him from Eli Roth Presents the Legion of Exorcists on Travel Channel. And that can be seen now on Max and Discovery Plus. If anybody wants to go and catch up on the episodes. He is also an author. He has 2 books, God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry, volumes 1 and 2. I'm Annette Munich, his co-host and publisher. These 2 books are some of the scariest books, if not the scariest books I've ever done. Each chapter is one of his cases. The stories are absolutely incredible. You can never tell how it's going to go next. They're completely unpredictable and real life. And he does put his prayers and his resolution in the story. So, and they are all kinds of stories. I could go on and on about it, and sometimes I do, because the stories are actually pretty intense and shocking. The haunted seniors home with a possessed person, that was not good. That one was really upsetting. And there's like a gypsy carnival where the people were doing rituals and all kinds of strange and bad things happening. A Native American story with, well, I guess you could call it a shapeshifter type werewolf creature. These are not your ordinary things. So I also bring that up because that's another way to help support Father Shawn. And his books are available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. And we also have Help Me, I'm Haunted, which we did last year based upon a lot of your questions and your topics. So that is a topics-based book to help people deal with extreme paranormal situations. So any of those helps him. The books are available on Amazon, also at his website, ghostbegone.biz, where you can also get a signed copy if you would like. So having said all that, and I did remember to say who I am, so I can skip that. And now I'll bring in Dr. Jim Segala, who's kind enough to join us today, and we're so happy to have him. And here he is. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming back.
No, it's my pleasure. I'm glad to speak to you people and kind of you talk about some of the interesting things that are going on right now with all of the crazy disclosures and all that information that's flowing right now. We're in the thick of it, and it's actually a really good time to be investigating this type of phenomena.
We are very much in the thick of it, and that is like the topic recently. And I was hoping that there might be another drop of files because they've been tending to do that on Fridays, but they didn't. But we do have the Spielberg movie, but you are a real tech guy. From anybody that watched Skinwalker, and all of the very scientific procedures that they went through to just be very careful and analytical. I don't know if I've ever asked you this before. Were you a believer before you got involved in Skinwalker?
So no, that's actually a really good question. So when I started in my road, down my educational road, and I ended up looking at, different things that I could do with my education and my career and things like that. I actually found Hal Puthoff, which is a researcher out in Austin right now. He's one of the premier researchers in the strange phenomena world, and he actually is very very steeped right now in the whole disclosure thing. In fact, Hal Puthoff, if you ever heard of him, he got invited to the premiere of the Spielberg movie because he's such a high profile scientist, and so he'll be helping him and answering questions and things like that. So I worked for Hal for probably 12 years. Hal was Bob Bigelow's science advisor when he owned the ranch. And it was always, information came back to Hal, and it was all this information that was being, brought back in trying to get analyzed. And that's why I was brought on. I'm a researcher that really steeped in looking at numbers and coming up with analysis and things like that. So that's one of my specialties, and that's how I got started. And to answer your question, Annette, I don't really believe at that point I was aware of how true a lot of these things are. So when people tell you these stories and they say, I saw this, I saw that, prior to that, I think you kind of raise an eyebrow and say, okay, well, that's interesting. But after seeing so much and actually visualizing a lot of things myself, everybody that now gives me their story and tells me their narratives, I'm wide awake. I'm ready to listen because it's like I believe it now. There's definitely something out there that's causing a lot of people to have these experiences, and this is what the research is all about.
That's interesting too for people that are very science minded. If we had absolute proof, it wouldn't be the paranormal, it would be science.
It would be
So,
science, right?
right. And, there's things that are very hard to validate or duplicate. Yeah. So, it lands in the mysterious realm. But maybe, there's people that kind of staunchly don't believe. And then there's other people that are just sort of open minded, like, let's see what it is. I don't know what it is.
Well, don't
I
you need both sides? I mean, and
do.
and every type of thing, you need both sides. You need people saying that I don't believe, and people saying that I do believe, and somewhere in the middle, there's the right answer, right? So you can't have everybody believe, and then you really go down a bad road. You need the other side to be pulling back a little bit and keeping everybody honest, and I think that's super important when you're trying to find a really complicated problem solved to get the right answers for it. So. It's very interesting. So one of the interesting things that, as I developed my skills with working at the Institute in Austin with Hal, is that you look at things and you have to be very subjective. You can't just jump to conclusion. You have to take everything as evidence based. So when you see something that doesn't really match your theory and your ideas, you have to look at that, come up with a hypothesis, and then come back and look at what can we do experimentally to gather more information about this. So and that's what I do. So we've designed so many different experiments and come up with several studies that give us the statistical wherewithal to say, okay, yeah, I understand that these things are truly happening, but we say that it's scientifically really with a pause to say within some statistical number we feel that this is happening. Like for instance, we ran a study back in 2015 2016 where we had a cohort of maybe 30 or 40 people, and we instrumented them, and we gave them the ability to narrate what was happening to them on a daily, maybe even hourly basis, some of them. And then from that study, we realized that they were seeing things, they were witnessing strange phenomena, but it wasn't something they were making up. We had enough information to say statistically, these people were legitimately seeing these things and actually interacting with these things to some extent. We were having instrumentation around them that was actually showing that during the time that they were involved in interacting with this phenomena out there, maybe a craft or an orb or a shadow figure or whatever that particular case was, the instrumentation showed that there was actually physically something in that area that was anomalous, that was making something go off, one of the sensors go off. So, when you start seeing things like that and you collect, thousands and thousands of these data points, you start saying, okay, within some very high percentage, we feel that these people were earnestly having this experience.
That's really interesting. And going back to your beginning, because you were at Skinwalker before it was Brandon Fugel.
Right. So what happens is that it was all the data that was collected. So Bob Bigelow had maybe a half a dozen scientists there and collecting data, doing experiments, and that would all filter back, and they were analyzing it. Hal got a good piece of that, and Bigelow had him do the analysis of that, and that's what I got involved in. So right out of the gate when I got there, it was like I started to look at data from these people that wasn't really lining up with my belief system and my understanding and my education. So right out of the gate, when I started looking at this stuff and the data that was coming through, it started to dawn on me that it was like there is something very anomalous here that needs to be understood. And of course, that then led to the next realization or the next investigation. We started looking at not so much just that they are having experiences, what are the physical effects on the body when it actually happens? And that's when we started really getting into the medical effects. So we had a very large cohort of people. We had over 200 people that had legitimate medical claims, and they went to their physician, and they got medical reports and MRIs and CTs and blood and all this other stuff that they had gathered. And then Hal, being who he is, he's like a magnet for all this very strange anomalous stuff. He gathered these medical reports or medical files and basically came to myself and another scientist and said, we need to get a handle on this. We need to understand why these people are getting hurt. And when I say hurt, some of these people were ending up in the hospital, and they were having long, chronic bouts of, symptoms that they just, had very hard time getting around. So, these poor individuals were having experiences. They were seeing something. They were seeing orbs. They were seeing, things in the sky or whatever the case may be. And they were walking away with, maybe lesions or tinnitus or headaches or, fibrosis or maybe edemas or things like that. And, it gives you a pause to say, okay, well, these individuals are going through something. And it's really, one of those, the things that people say is that if you have the ability to do something, it's your responsibility to do something about it. So you take it on yourself to get out there and try to, figure out what's going on. And that's what we started, doing more and more investigations and studies, and continuing to bring people in. And right now that it's, now that, we started this in 2015, now that it's, 2026, we have over 350 people throughout throughout the world. Actually, we're in 13 different countries. We have people, like I said, over 300 people every day narrating, giving us our narratives. They have, we have instrumentation that's around them that we're, bringing information back and looking at it and building up a very, very large data set, which allows us to analyze things.
I love that. And I love that you went into our topic about the medical effects on people. Sure. And I thought that wasn't really quite talked about very much, because you do hear about medical effects of people that have been abducted, and they have implants and they have all sorts of strange things, but just people who are witness that would cause medical consequences.
Yeah, so I mean, you can look at all of the reports that we had gotten. So we had thousands of reports, and that all stems. They some people claim, some people put down. They say, okay, I feel that I was abducted, not physically abducted. Most of them, what they feel is that their consciousness was abducted. They temporarily left their body for a little while, and that's more of a conscious thing. Physically, a lot, some people feel that they might have levitated a little bit or something like that, or their partner would wake up and see them. They were you know something was going on with them. They were moving up were unnaturally. So a lot of these kind of things, but what we study is, okay, we say, okay, I understand those things are happening. What is it doing physiologically to our bodies? And if you think about it, in order to do a lot of the things that we see, the energies that we see, it takes an enormous amount of energy to do that. And what is that doing to us? So that's why we say, these things have medical effects on us, because we're just in the environment where whatever this is going, this phenomena is just going on, and our bodies are just trying to react to it.
Yeah. Um, it makes me go back and think about a lot of things and a lot of stories that I've seen, heard, and whatever, and how mysterious that is, and people who have just gotten very strange symptoms that you might not immediately connect to. I saw a UFO the other
Hmm.
night, and now I have this happening, and it doesn't seem like an obvious connection at all.
Well, to that point, if you don't mind, I'd like to share my screen, and for the
Sure,
people that can
please,
actually see the screen,
please do.
I'm going to try to walk people that are not able to visualize things. I'm going to walk you through a report that was created, and just basically kind of talk through that whole thing that you just said about people not understanding that. So this report right here that I'm showing everybody is basically something that I put together that walks you through. Okay, what are the phenomena? What is the interaction with the phenomena? What are the different ailments that people have gotten? What are the things that people do about them? So what is their reaction to it, and how often people, how long does it take these symptoms to go away? So basically, what I'm showing here is a slide of like what are the different things that are actually going on with these people. So just to give you an idea of where this data came from, so we've got 350 people throughout the world that have that are in our study, that we have a very large cohort, and they report to us all the things that happen to them on a daily basis. And from all that data, we have like over 40,000 different narratives from people, and we've gathered, each one of these people have like environmental devices that act, or environmental sensor devices that give us all the data from what's going on around them. And that's where all this data is coming from. And what you find out is that most of the people, or 27% of the people, sense a presence. That's their thing. They don't see anything, but they feel that there's something present in their environment that causes them to say that this is a strange phenomena. And then what we find out is that when they do claim to have these interactions with these unseen presence, we do get indications on our devices that show that there's some energy in the environment that is anomalous and doing things that it shouldn't be. And then you talk about the most popular one is the shadow, is the spheres. I mean, so a lot of people see orbs. So many people see orbs,
Right.
and that's the kind of thing where people are might be in their bedroom, might be outside or whatever. And then the next biggest one is shadow figures. It's 18%. So people don't really see the thing; they actually see a shadow of it. So it's not a crisp thing that they see. Another one people claim is that they miss time. A lot of people, when you look at these narratives, like over 40,000, they say, I was, doing my thing, being very, very happy. And then all of a sudden, I just woke up a couple hours later. And during that time, I felt that I was away from my body, and I was getting information from something, and I was interacting with something, and I just don't know where I was. And the next most popular one that they claim is which is very low, obviously, is seeing crafts. I mean, physically going and seeing crafts. And then, of course, there's the physical contact where they actually would see something. So these are kind of the breakdown of what people claim to be their interaction with the phenomena. And then we move off to the next one to say, okay, what do they claim to have
I could,
their, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, I could add that to the stage for the people who are with us.
Oh, I would, yeah, you can definitely send this out to everybody. This is a public, oh yeah, yeah. This is a public thing that we can, you can just show, yeah. Oh, they haven't seen this yet?
No, because we have to add it to the stage for them to be able to see it.
Okay, so,
So now they see it.
all right, perfect. Okay, so that's what I was talking about, this graph right here, where I'm going through and showing you what are the different types of interactions these people have. And like I said, it goes from the unseen presence down to, shadow figures, lost time, and UAPs and things like that, and then non-human, the actual grays themselves. And then, okay, what are they actually when they actually have these experiences and say, okay, I think I had a medical event. What are they actually having? So a lot of them have, skin lesions, so they'll get bumps on their skin, or they'll get rashes, or they'll just have some kind of a dermatological type of lesions. The next most popular one is tinnitus. They would, our ears are extraordinarily sensitive. When you get high energy around you, it tends to actually make your make your ears ring. I mean, so it's like tinnitus. And then dissociative symptoms, like, you kind of lose sense of yourself. You don't know where you are. You don't, you're kind of like fumbling around. You don't really know, because I think your brain is like kind of rationalizing and trying to understand what the heck is going on around you with this energy. So it does that. And then you have the speech loss. That is a very big one. And then, of course, there's the joint inflammation. People have a lot of say, I came out of this experience, I felt these things, and all of a sudden I just, my joints were sore, my fingers swelled up. I mean, there was all these things going on, and and then it quickly goes away. So that's another one that they, another medical symptom that they find. And then there's the vertigo, and getting dizzy and not really being able to stand up straight. And then that's another very big one. And then immune. So one of the things that's interesting is that when people have these interactions with the phenomena, your brain is saying, what the heck is going on? What am I dealing with here? And naturally what your brain will do is will alert your immune system to say, something's weird, something's coming in, go figure out what it is and go fight it. And your white blood cells go up, all your indicators go up. So your immune system just goes crazy. And then basically starts trying to figure out what's going on. There's also radiation type burns that people get, these sores on their body, autoimmune reactions. So when you have these things, and you might, of course, have these immune system that's kicked off, you get these autoimmune things, reactions like you would see if you had an actual autoimmune type of injury. So that's another thing that we look for in the medical reports to see if that's any kicked off. And then fibrosis. I mean, you get these unexplained fibroses that we just can't figure out, why they come, and then they dissipate quickly. So these are the kind of things that people report, and not just the people reporting, but the medical professionals that are looking after these people report. Some people self-diagnosed and bring it in, and I'm going to get into that now. So now we say, okay, who are the people that are seeking? What we find is a very, very small percentage actually will go and actually get care. It's a very, very small percentage. It's only 4%. A little bit bigger, they would go to a doctor or something like that for multiple visits. Less than that is single visits, where they would actually go to the doctor once, they would have some kind of diagnosis and go away. But now, and not getting back to your point, most of these people either self-diagnose and just try to self-treat, like with a Tylenol or whatever. But most of them dismiss it. They dismiss it as saying, you know, all of a sudden, I had this interaction with the phenomena. I don't know what the heck, it was, like a profound thing. I lost a little time, but then they might have had a little lesion on them, or they might have got like a little thing on their lips, or they might have got an earache or a headache or something like that, but they never really associated it with the actual phenomena. So they dismiss it. And that's a biggie. So, like I said, that's the largest percentage. People just don't really realize that a lot of the things are, like 74% have no formal medical care. They just like completely ignore it. And that's to your point.
Well, right, because a lot of those things, you might get ringing in your ears or get some kind of weird rash.
Yep.
And, there's random things that happen to us all the time. And then a couple of days later,
Correct.
it's better.
Yep.
And there's not a connection made. And also, we've heard so much about what happens with people with high EMF around them that
Yes.
can cause a dissociative feeling
Yes.
and different kind of mental
That's correct.
consequences and
Yeah,
what.
the cognitive problems, and I'll get into that a little bit. One of the things I wanted to talk about is how long these things last. And then just to your point, you had just made this point that most of them, they're basically acute, meaning that they come and they go quickly. They go away. So less than 4 weeks, maybe by the end of the week, the people are all fine. The subacute ones, or maybe it lingers a little bit longer. They might have lesions that last a little, or fibrosis that lasts. Very seldom do you get these chronic thing that persists for more than 12 weeks. So they might have to, continue to go back to the doctor. And very, very seldom do they actually ever have, serious secondary health complications. Like only when you get into some of the autoimmune type of diseases where your body thinks it's, something inside you is wrong, and it starts attacking it. And then the doctor is going to have to, do whatever it has to do to figure out, how to overcome these things. So, I mean, this is data that's collected, not just, this is not anecdotal data. This is collected over, I think it's like 40. Let me go back up a little bit. So it's like 40, yeah, over 42,000. So there's 42,000 narratives that came in from over 350 people. And this is the data that we collected and analyzed, and we put into models, and we did some projections and things like that. So we know what, this is to a fairly large degree. Then one of the other things that, and then we've gone through 3 studies. The first study was a very rudimentary study, just looking at the medical cases. There was 200 medical cases that were reviewed, that came to HAL, came to the Institute for Advanced Study. That's where the institute was, and with the attending physician saying, "I don't know what this is," but the person did, receive some type of treatments, but they were not very satisfied that they understood exactly what it is. So that was the first one from 2015 to 2017. The next study from 2020 to 2023 really brought in a lot of specialized people that were real, big experiencers that were having, continuous things. And from that, we had 36 participants with 3,500 narratives from those people. And then we were able to understand that, yes, in fact, this is something that occurs non-local. In other words, it's happening to them from the outside. So the experience that they were having statistically, was from the outside, as some energy or some phenomena was coming in and basically prompting them to have these experiences. So that's what we learned from there.
And
And then we go to today. Now we're like way over. We're all over the world. We have funding. We have some actual funding to up to 10,000 people all over the world. So we have, if anybody wants to join us, we have complete funding for it. But they have to, help us along. They have to give us their narratives. They have to be, interactive with the system, and then give us their data.
and you would want people, it wouldn't matter if you're dealing with paranormal such as spirits, or if
No,
you're dealing
yeah,
with
we
UAP.
don't, yeah, we don't classify what in fact, it's becoming very, very obvious to a lot of people that, we're dealing with a phenomenon that just is interpreted differently by different people. Like the MUFON people will say, okay, well, it's all UFOs. Then we have experiencers that say, well, it's all just experiences. Then the paranormal people, well, it's all, these strange feet. But what it's looking like is that all these people are actually describing the same thing, just a little differently.
So
And so
would
we
you,
don't discriminate from, well, we don't want you, we want you. we think everybody's experiencing this strange phenomenon.
Okay, would you think that all of that would then be interdimensional phenomena? Would you call it that?
Well, very possible because so of all the people that report to have these experiences feel that they've left their body. They're not, they haven't been abducted, but they've been abducted in a conscious sense where they've actually been taken out and they've seen things that they've never seen before. They've gone places they've never gone before, and they learn things that they couldn't possibly learn, just sitting in their room or the bed or wherever they are. So it looks like they're leaving that realm or that whatever that is that they're in and going to some other dimension, some other place that gives them this information. So to answer your question, it seems to be that there is a definite difference between what these people are existing in normally and what they then go to and when they're having their experiences.
Then would we say that there's doorways or portals, perhaps?
Well, yeah,
What?
the portal would be whatever their, this conduit that actually allows them to go off into their thing. If you want to say it's a portal, that's one way to phrase it. It's just however they get there, it's just they're passing from one conscious state to another conscious state. And, they're not physically leaving their body, but they're physically leaving their, the current, their brain is really not the thing that's is controlling things. They're off someplace else now. So they're
And
getting their input from something else.
it's a little off to the side, but it sounds kind of like people who speak about astral travel in their
Yeah,
sleep
yeah.
that they're
That's really a good definition of it. But these people, if you look at the narratives from all these people, they're all describing something that is not local to them.
right.
And it's you can see one or see two, that's interesting, but when you start to see thousands of these people, and of course we've got these amazing tools that allow us to really take a look at people's narratives and really strip out a lot of the personal stuff, and we strip out all the things and allows us to really get down and dirty into what they're actually saying. And most of the time it's like, the indication is that the sentiment of whatever they're saying is, they're very, very factual about it. They were very anxious about it, or they were very scared at the time. So we get a lot of indicators of what these people were going through as they described this thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well,
Well, I
I
was
just
just going
wanted,
to say,
talking about that, I just wanted to, let everybody know that, well, as we take this data, we have a lot of oversight above us that are actually in this slide is basically, kind of telling you how we do this. So we have what they call an IRB. It's a institutional review board, meaning that there's a group of people, doctors and, and professionals at Harvard that actually oversee what we do and how we collect data, how we store it, how we disseminate it to other people. So whatever data that we gather from these people or from anybody from the study is is protected, to a very high degree, and the Harvard IRB actually oversees all that, and we strip out all the personal information. We run it through a lot of these AI pipelines to pull out of the information, and of course, what we try to do is we try to basically put a standardization to what we're doing. I mean, there's a lot of people out there trying to do this work, and then we're putting standards together to do this, and it's a monstrous job, but we're getting there.
it is a monstrous job, and trying to make definitions and then put boundaries on things and categorize things
Sure.
accurately. That's a very big task. And I was going to say, you might have, and it's great that you have a group of people doing this, because there could be a lot of people that would go to the doctor or the minor emergency care, but they're not going to say, and Tuesday night I saw a UFO. I
Yeah,
think
they're not going to say that. Yeah,
they're not going to say that. They're just going to show whatever it is and
sure.
take whatever treatment they get
That's
because they
correct.
don't expect to be believed.
Right. So,
Maybe that might be changing.
well, to that point, this is what I want to talk about. I mean, I think it's very important that everybody understands this. So there's this thing about I guess back in 2016, called the Havana syndrome. It was a very well publicized
Are you
attack.
saying Havana, like Havana, Cuba? Havana
Yeah,
is the place?
Havana syndrome was something where there was in Havana, Cuba, there was a consulate that got attacked. Supposedly got attacked by some energy weapon and hurt 50 people. And then that same thing happened to Canadian at the Canadian consulate. Same thing happened in I guess there's a whole bunch of in France it happened and in China it happened. So it was a thing that the US government was looking into called the Havana syndrome. And then they renamed it since then. I'm sure some of the people listening to this have heard this. And it's a thing that the government was dealing with and battling with because they were all their State Department people were a lot of their State Department people were getting attacked by what they thought was an energy weapon. And it turns out that what they were saying, and this is the comparison here, is that these people that were having these issues were almost line by line, exactly the same symptoms as what a regular experiencer, people boots on the ground, like, regular experiencer that might be listening to this, they would have. So it's like when the government saw this, they said, okay, well, this is a special case. These people are not, seeing any paranormal, but they're having the exact same symptoms as people that interact with this paranormal kind of thing. And it's kind of interesting that the government then now actually takes this thing and they made a medical code out of this. I don't know if you know what a medical code is. It's basically when something happens that a diagnosis is a something that a doctor can then say, okay, this person is diagnosed with Havana syndrome or whatever they're calling it. I don't know exactly what they're calling it right now, but what this is means that the they've actually made a medical code for it, so now you can get treatment for it, you can get insurance for it, so it's
Okay.
something that's real. And it's great because now it says that since the UAP experiencers, people that actually interact with UAPs or had the same exact thing, very, very shortly we might see that there's another medical code for that. And these poor unfortunate people that have interacted and got hurt and stuff like that, there might be in the near future, they might be something that, or it could be taken seriously by the medical community.
Right. Instead of something completely undefined.
Yeah. So no longer do you have to be afraid of telling your doctor that you had an experience, you had some kind of interaction with a strange phenomena that you don't understand. And so there's very shortly we'll have a medical code for this that they can actually put in the file, and insurance companies would see it and stuff like that and know what it is.
Nice. We've had some really interesting comments. I don't know if you're able to read them, but
No.
Carl is saying that he's heard and read up on that. Heidi was talking about some of her experiences, and she actually has had symptoms
Hmm.
that she says clears up on its own over time, including random double vision.
Yeah, that's yeah. So your optical nerves are extremely sensitive.
Yeah.
And so when these interactions happen, you get these energies that actually will cause you to have these, very, very, I don't want to scare anybody, but I mean, our bodies are very sensitive.
Right.
Our our optical nerves are very sensitive. Our acoustic nerves are very sensitive, so they get affected. So I want to just move on just a little bit. I know we're
Sure. Go ahead.
so this is just to let people aware of how we do this, how we collect all this data, what's going on is that this is the data that comes from devices. And these are the devices. There's a watch and there's of course, this evolved over 10 years. So now the incarnation of this is that a very small compact device. There's a watch that constantly records. So when people are having these interactions, maybe they're out doing their work or they're in bed or whatever, we can monitor and make sure that when they do have these interactions with the phenomena that we're monitoring, we're getting things. So we have these anomalous things. And what it turns out is that we see a lot of this kind of thing. So, these are just examples of anomalies that happen when people have reported, having these interactions with the phenomena. We saw the data, and we saw the big anomalies happen in the data, and this is just very, very large spikes. You can see that what we're basically saying here is that these things are not just made up in their head. These are things that are happening from the outside that's making them see these things or have these experiences. And we have the scientific data to prove that, not only in their narratives but also in the scientific equipment that's sitting around them. So, and then there's just a couple more examples from something like this, which is very interesting. And then just to give you an idea, I don't want anybody to get grossed out about this, but these are the typical kind of lesions and markings on the body. There's other types, but these are the dermatological things that people get. So they get they'll have their experience, they'll have their profound experience, and then they'll, of course, they'll have these rashes or these herpes or whatever they are that quickly go away. And then you go to the doctor, and the doctor say, I don't know what these things are. They're not anything. They're not a poison ivy. There's not a herpes. They're not anything that I've ever seen before. And of course, that's when we get a hold of them and we start categorizing them and bringing that information in. So I don't want to gross anybody out, but these are examples of this type of things that we look at.
Yeah, because those almost look like they could be bug bites too.
And they're not. I mean, if they go to their position and they say, okay, that's definitely not it. I mean, there's just some of these things, they almost look like radiation burns. I mean, if you ever seen anybody go through like, any kind of radiation treatments, these are very typical, but they're nowhere near radiation equipment. They're not anywhere near anything that could create radiation. So, they basically say, how do I get this? And they go to their attending physician and say, what the heck is this? And then their doctors say, I have no idea.
In all of the cases that you monitor, whether it's ghost and spirit or UAP, is there always a high EMF? Is that something that is?
Yeah. So I mean, this is a microwave radiation. So yeah, there was a big electromagnetic spike or EMF or however you want to classify it. There's a bunch of ways. So RF. There's also usually a lot of infrasound. There's a lot of, in fact, if you wouldn't, I'm gonna show you. So, for instance, like this is a device right now that's live on Blind Frog Ranch, and these are all the indicators. So you get like this is the magnometer, this is the gyroscope, this is the RF energy, and you can select all this. Basically, you can select the temperature. You can look at everything as far as maybe the pressure. You can look at all these crazy things, and then what you find out is that all these signals are coming and looking and showing up into our system, and at the same time these people are reporting what's going on. So this is the data that's coming through, and of course I can actually go through and I can look at big time scale. So maybe I can take it for a whole day or something like that. So like I can look at the day, I can look at just a few hours or something like that, or I can even just say what's happening for the hour. So this is what's going on for 1 hour, and then you can look at what's these, and then you might find something going on, like some anomaly going on, like you can't understand. Right now there doesn't need to be anything happening, but there's always the case where something strange is going on in that area. So like these big spikes in the electromagnetic spectrum, we get these monstrous spikes, not so small, but this is basically the data that we get.
I got Carl saying federal agencies use form DS-4316
Yep.
or DD form 3220 for defense
Nice.
personnel for
Yep. And that's the
lump sum payments.
Yep. And then they also have a code, a diagnostic code for the physicians as well as that. So I mean, this is all good stuff because it really tells us that there's things going on out there that we are, that the people out there, that the medical professionals and in the insurance institutions and all that stuff, they're starting to take seriously, and I think that's very, very important.
And what I don't want to really change direction very much, but when you're talking about all the conditions, I noticed in the paranormal, there are different things that are more likely to happen under certain weather type conditions. And I don't know if that's across the board. Have you found that certain weather conditions make a more favorable environment? And
Yeah, so one of the interesting things is that we're learning is that when people make these narratives, we actually go and actually download the current weather at that location. So what we do is we do what we call the ADSB. We look for what aircraft is in the vicinity, what's flying over their heads. And then we go and look at what satellites are in their vicinity. Where is that, what's going on over their heads, way up in the sky. And then we look at, is there any phenomena like, a gamma burst, or is there any other phenomena that's going on that might have caused this thing? And then we can weed that out and then what's the weather, what's the local weather for them? Is there any like a thunderstorm or like electromagnetic discharge or something like that? And that's all spun into this data that we collect, and it gives us a really good indication of what is going on with this person. So when they do have this interaction with the phenomena, they're actually, we've kind of narrowed it down to what actually is happening to them.
interesting. So I was going to ask you, you know, when you made this shift and went to Blind Frog, how do you feel like that's expanded your knowledge or your research? What do you think is pretty much fundamental the same? What do you think has been expansive? And I do want to mention that your friend from that show, Dwayne, passed away,
He
and
did.
that
Yep.
was very sad.
Very sad.
And, everyone a prayer and rest in peace for Dwayne. I also lost a friend in the paranormal. Philip Adrian Booth passed away this week. And he was one of the Booth brothers, and they made a lot of documentaries, paranormal documentaries, if people have watched any of that. And that was very sudden and sad.
So, I mean, get to answer your question, and it is very sad that these people are no longer with us. They were, basically helping us get through all this and giving us the information. Like, Dwayne at Black Rock Ranch was very open. He's one of those people that wanted to tell everybody what's going on. But to answer your question, so when I was on Skinwalker Ranch doing investigations and things like that, it was the weirdest thing because every time you walk on that property, in fact, when you walk on that property with people like religious people, they would always stop and pray. It was like they were just like asking permission to go on the property. And then when this is a Skinwalker, when you drive into the property, you're always looking over your shoulders like there's something there. There's always something very strange. So that part of the region seems to be is like, and like a lot of bad things happen there over the
And
years. A lot of.
not
Go
to
ahead.
interrupt, but for people that don't know, Blind Frog is right there too. And
Yeah, they're
that's
right. They're 20 miles apart, or
yeah.
20 or 30 miles apart. So that area is kind of south in Uinta Basin, and then just above it is Blind Frog Ranch, and that's the opposite. People actually go there to feel better, to feel healed, to
Hmm.
come out and they feel amazing. So there's a lot of retreats that go there, and they do spiritual things because it's like it's a very happy place. So you get this very weird thing where 20 miles away, you go there and it's like you're looking up the mesa, you're over looking over your shoulders, like very sinister there. But then you go to Blind Frog Ranch and it's a very, very happy place. People walk away feeling much better than they go in. At basically at Skinwalker, you kind of as you leave the place, you kind of think, oh, I'm glad I'm out, this kind of thing. So it's a very, and as you go farther and farther up in the canyon toward the mountain area, that's where all the Native Americans practice their beliefs, and that's when you really start getting really good vibes, and you go there and you start feeling really well.
That's interesting. So it's almost like you actually can feel the heaviness of the dread of like a curse at Skinwalker, and then the inversion is like you
Yeah,
pass into an area that feels blessed.
yeah. So you have to ask yourself, I mean, is this like a a thing that's like there's energy all over the place, and that just Skinwalker happens to be in a low spot. and Blind Frog might be in a high spot. I don't know, but it seems that way. So, we have a lot of participants that are in that area surrounding it, and that's true. We don't have a lot down at Skinwalker, but around that area, but all the people that are surrounding that area, like in the vernal area and things like that, they all report that. They normally have very, very positive experiences when they see a craft. It's not a scary thing, it's like an inviting thing. But the people down in the southern part, it always seems like they're always scared of something, and they're always like trying to protect themselves. So yeah, of all the things that I've learned just being in that area and doing research in that area, it was like the most surprising thing is that you just walk away feeling differently when you're in the two different areas.
That is really interesting. 'Cause everything is energy, and there's a lot of us that are kind of sensitive. I don't say I'm psychic, but I am sensitive. And you could pick up on that right away. And it's like Blind Frog on one side of the mesa and are they divided by that weird mesa?
No, they're divided by like 30 miles. So the mesa is just a small little cliff. And it's not even part of Skinwalker Ranch. Somebody else owns that.
Okay.
So when you look up into the mesa, it always seems like somebody's looking down at you. It's always like somebody's spying on you. So you're always
Yeah.
looking over your shoulder saying, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
Um, Totally different at Blind Frog. It's totally different. It's a little bit. In fact, people go there to swim in the pond, and they come out, and they like things heal. Um, and then
Interesting.
it's kind of interesting that unfortunately Dwayne Ollinger, who was the owner of the property, unfortunately he was very, very sick at the end, and he would go there, and really sometimes he would feel better. He would like his he had fibrosis and things like that that would just like heal themselves, and when he went back to his other properties and went away, that's when the symptoms started picking up.
So kind of like a froggy Lourdes.
Yeah, so it's very tough to explain, but you have to actually experience it yourself. It's a very strange thing.
Yeah. Because people talk a lot about Sedona, Arizona.
That's another place that's very positive, right? They go there and they feel very positive. I believe that's the sentiment that I've heard.
Right. That's what kind of reminded me of what you were saying of people's experience at Sedona, at Machu Picchu, and
Yep.
different things like that. And um, sometimes they attribute it to energetic ley lines.
Yeah, I mean, you could say, is there a ley line in that area of Uinta Basin that because ley lines don't have the same energy all the way across. It kind of like goes up and down. It's like it oscillates, as it moves along the as it moves along the ground. And it might be that Skinwalker is in a low, and that whole area around Blind Frog is in a high, because everybody reports that everything they it's more euphoric when they have these experiences. Usually a happy one. They go someplace and they learn something. They walk away with something that they didn't have.
Right. Interesting. I had I got a really good deal on a house a long time ago, and it was just bad energy. Even everything I planted there died, and I grow things pretty well. Even the bulbs died, the
Wow.
bushes died. The tree in the front yard looked like it was trying to grow away from the house.
Oh
The,
boy.
the people that lived there before me, it turned out that they were devil worshippers. So this is a very interesting story. But the reason I brought it up was there are different ways that I think land can be cursed or sour or something.
Yeah, and then just to that point, I think one of the things that we've learned, and again, I don't want to say learn definitively, but we have some good statistical evidence that the property like Skinwalker Ranch, what they'll do is they'll only be people on the ranch for a very short period of time. Otherwise, they might instrument it and nothing happens. I mean, nothing at all happens. It's when you introduce people into the property, that's when things start happening. So this land might have a aura about it, a negative energy about it, but it really doesn't get brought to the foreground or actually interacting until there's people there that actually have the ability to to have these
Oh,
experiences.
so interesting. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost like there's a consciousness. And if you had cameras and monitoring equipment, if nobody's around, it's fairly dormant.
That's exactly right. And that's what
Then it comes
really,
to
right,
life.
when people get on the property. So
And
that's what happened. That's one of the big reasons Bob Bigelow got rid of the place.
oh,
He was going crazy because he would spend all this money instrumenting. He would, build all this stuff and then pull the people away, and nothing would happen. Absolutely nothing would happen for years. And then, of course, he would do the same thing, but then people would be there, and all of a sudden, all this crazy stuff would happen to the people. The lines would get cut and things would happen. And so it's like when you introduce the people into it, that's when very strange things start happening. Same thing at Blank Frog Ranch. Right now, you saw the waveforms of Blank Frog Ranch that are happening now. There's nobody there, and it's very, very low. But you get people there, all of a sudden, you get these like big magnetic pulses, or you get these big electromagnetic pulses, but they're not creating them. It's just, the phenomena that's actually interacting with these people.
that's fascinating. Really. And, so that's a very cool observation. And now you've experienced both sides of the energetic coin.
Yeah, it's quite revealing. It was like, oh my God, I think this is actually, I don't like to jump to conclusions, but after doing this for so long, it's like, I think it's true.
And it's nice to come across something that's positive when a lot of the cases and a lot of things that we experience are negative.
That's exactly
People,
right. It's
yeah,
right.
to
I
believe.
talk about, I talk about injuries and things like that. That's the negative side of things. But a lot of people, most of the people walk away from these experiences that they have, and like they learned something. They gathered some information that they didn't have before. And, it's a positive thing. Some people are scared of that. And we have a support group when we do our studies. We have a support group that people can talk to mentors and, subject matter experts and things like that, just to kind of get through the day of doing this.
Well, we're getting to the end of our hour, so I want to give you a minute to remind people how they can find you.
Yeah, so I want to share my screen again. So we have a place you can go where you can find out all sorts of stuff on how to get involved in the study, all the information, all the data that we've collected. So there's two things. You have to, can you share my screen? I think you
Sure.
have to actually
Yeah, I see it.
share it. Yep.
Yeah, the stage. There we
So
go.
here's a QR code that you can click on with your phone, and that'll bring you to a website to sign up. And then here's the actual website that you can go to actually get involved or read about, even just look at the data. We have all of our data
And
that we published for the first. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm going to read that aloud for people that might be
Okay.
listening in their cars. And that's www.experiencerstudies.com, MUPAS Study 2.
Yep. And if you,
Experiencerstudies.com. That's what you need to remember, experiencerstudies.com.
yeah, and for people that can see this, that we just click on either copy that straight into your browser, or just click on the QR code and you can bring it right there. But we're, like I said, we're approaching, very, very soon we'll be approaching 1,000, and then we want to get up to 10,000 people throughout the world. So
That's
we're
beautiful.
looking.
And people can also find you on Facebook. That's where
Oh
I
yeah, we're on Facebook, and so you can, and then send a message to Facebook. We'll get back to you. We'll get you involved and answer your questions and things like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Carl says, great show. Thanks, Jim and Annette. And Heidi is saying, thank you, Jim. And also tell Barbara, I'm reacting to people's comments in their hearts. I did not give you a dozen hearts during the show. I'm not flirting. So if
Got
she's
it.
going to be like, what is with this weird woman with this all the time? Is that's what they're doing with me.
Got it. That's funny.
And did you have a good time?
Oh, that was fun. Yeah, there's a very interesting subject for me, so I always enjoy talking about this.
I would like to maybe have you back in the fall if you don't mind.
Sure.
And I want to thank everybody for listening today. We're so happy to have you with us. We do have a new book, Meridian War Invasion by James Baxter. That's very timely. If you like the UFO UAP topic, this is a first contact book. really well written, and that's on Amazon, and that is brand new. And we have a Ricky Raccoon children's book that is coming up this weekend, and I'll show that next week. Also, next week, we are going to have as our guest Camille James Harmon, and she is an actress out in LA and an experiencer as well, UFO abductee experiencer, and she's going to tell her story. And thank you again, everybody. Want you to have a great night, a great weekend. Come back next week. We enjoy you. We love our listeners. And we will see you then. And thank you again, Jim. We appreciate you.
Hi, great being here.
Thank you so much.
Okay.